Hospital Porter's Pride and Dignity, stop the New World Order. Welcome to Panwo TV. And welcome to this, I think it's the 6th or the 7th in this series I'm doing on UFO Disclosure 2015. And we've been through a bit of a low patch. And the reason for that is that my last video was called Doubts Begin. And it was about these various naysayers who've come out and spoken out about this subject and the possibility of a UFO disclosure within this year. And in some cases I think they may be justified, in others not so. And I think you need a bit of balance, and I'm glad to say that in this video I'll be introducing you to the views of a few people who have taken a much more positive and optimistic view of, well, certainly the Roswell slides. Also, there's more news from Steve Bassett. Nothing much happened to report on during the last video I made on UFO Disclosure 2015, but Steve does have an update for this particular video. I've not had Steve back on my radio show yet, but I do hope to get him back on soon. In the meantime, he's been on a couple of other radio shows, like he's been on Enemy Within Radio, which is presented by two friends of mine, Thomas Barnes and Andy Young. And the reason I'm making this film now is it's now early April. It's actually April the 4th today, and you're probably watching it either today or the following day. But the reason I think I wanted to make a film now is because the time period during which Stephen Bassett hoped that the Congressional Hearing Initiative could get underway has just expired. He said it would be the first 3 months of the year. Those months are now gone, and we do not have the Congressional Hearing Initiative yet. But Steve is still trying, he's still working on it. I know he is. He is not talking about everything he's doing. I know there's things he's doing he can't talk about yet, but I know he's working hard behind the scenes. And I hope in the future to present a programme in which I report some good news in that department. In the meantime, I'm looking forward to drinking that Disclosure champagne. You never know. But until then, I'm going to talk. I'll talk you through a little bit of the latest news on the Disclosure front. I still feel, not just because of the news I'm going to talk about today, but generally, that we are in one of these windows of opportunities, Bassett calls them. That if disclosure is possible, if the government can come clean on is going to come clean on UFOs, and I'm not sure that is possible, as I've explained, then it's going to happen this year. I think we have a window of opportunity this year, based on what I've seen. I still feel there's still a sense of excitement in the air with what Bassett is doing in Washington and with the Roswell slides. So I'm going to go through some of the news with you now, and see what you think. See what other people have been saying about these things. Again, it's swings and roundabouts. There's still a lot of scepticism with a C out there, and of course with a K. But generally, there's a lot of positive news as well. On the subject of skeptics with a K, I've noticed the actual skeptic movement. I'm not just talking about the people who were in last week's video. I'm talking about the skeptic movement in general. Have been quiet on this. I mean, as you know, I keep my ear to the ground in all things Shay Skeptic. I listen to skeptic radio shows, things like that. I read skeptic websites and forums. There's been no mention of this that I can find at all. Nothing about the Roswell slides, nothing about the Congressional Hearing Initiative. Wonder why that is. It's not like the skeptics to miss a trick like this. I'm sure they're bound to say something sooner or later, and when they do, I'll be ready for them. After I've been through all the news, I will read through some of your comments. Thanks everyone for all the comments you left on the last video. I'll go through them one by one and reply to you. Okay, let's start with the good news, and this is very good news indeed. In fact, it could well be a game changer. This here is John Burroughs on the left in this picture, and he's one of the principal witnesses to the Rendlesham Forest incident, one of the most famous UFO cases in history, one of the most significant. John was actually a guest on program 102 of the Hapanmo show. If you're interested in listening to my radio show, that's a good one to pick up. And now, a lot of people, the skeptics, have said, oh, the Rendlesham Forest incident, it wasn't true. It was just some airmen having fun. They might have been on drugs. There was a lighthouse in the distance. It was truckloads of burning manure and all these other things that the skeptics keep saying, like skeptics do. Anyway, it's a bit tricky, you see, because John Burroughs, this guy here, he actually had a very close encounter with the object in the forest, and he was actually knocked unconscious at one point. He still doesn't know exactly what happened to him while he was unconscious. But after he left the US Air Force, he went to the Veterans Administration to pick up his medical records, and he found that they were classified. That's very, very rare indeed. Medical records being classified. There's only a handful of people who've ever had their medical records classified. One of them is John F. Kennedy. The other is Adolf Hitler. And I think they're the only two. There may be a few more. I don't know about it. Yeah, but there could be. Anyway, it's very rare indeed, put it that way. Strange they would classify the medical records for people who had seen a lighthouse, isn't it? Anyway, soon after the incident, John's health began to deteriorate. He developed eye problems and a heart murmur, and his heart condition got worse and worse and worse. Now, again, this happened straight after his encounter with the object. Now, when he left the US Air Force, and his heart condition got worse, and in 2013, he had to have open heart surgery. And the doctors couldn't get hold of his medical records. Now, this is really, really dangerous for someone who has a serious condition which could result in heart failure. And John could have died as a result of the fact that doctors couldn't get hold of his medical records. Another thing was, he didn't have the pension that he should have done, because all retiring Air Force military personnel will have a generous pension from the government. But John, you see, if John actually developed a health problem as a result of this encounter with the UFO, then he'd effectively be injured in the line of duty, and he'd have a lot more money. As a result, he didn't get that money because the government wouldn't admit that had happened to him. They wouldn't admit the connection. Anyway, he got the help of this guy on the right in the picture, which is Pat Frascogna. I know that sounds a bit sinister. It sounds like he's a mafia lawyer or something. No, but he's not. He's a very, very good guy. He's a solicitor. And he actually helped John with his case. And in January 2015, there was a breakthrough. And this press release came out. Attorney Frascogna says in his February 22nd press release, the December 1980 Rendlesham Forest incident in the United Kingdom is arguably the most well-documented and important UFO encounter in history. A UFO was seen over 3 consecutive nights by United States Air Force personnel stationed at the twin bases of Bentwaters and Woodbridge, near Ipswich, England, then the largest NATO Air Force base at the height of the Cold War. The UFO was tracked on radar, and physical evidence was found at a site where the UFO was seen to land in Rendlesham Forest in Suffolk, including indentations in the frozen ground, scorch marks on the sides of the trees, and radiation levels subsequently assessed by the Ministry of Defence as significantly higher than background. Airman First Class John Burroughs encountered the UFO at close proximity on the first night, while for many years the US government denied that this incident had even occurred. In 2006, the UK government declassified an intelligence study on UFOs, codenamed Project Condign, and classified as secret UK eyes only, in which the following statement is found. Quote, the well-reported Rendlesham Forest Bentwaters event is an example where it might be postulated that several observers were probably exposed to UAP, that's unidentified aerial phenomenon, radiation for longer than normal UAP periods.
John Burroughs was one of those observers who was exposed to UAP radiation in the Rendlesham forest in December 1980. However, despite having been exposed to UAP radiation as postulated by the UK's own intelligence report, the US government stonewalled John, his attorney, and two United States senators. Now, after decades of persistence, the US government has finally acknowledged that John Burroughs suffered adverse health effects in the Rendlesham forest, and therefore the government has recognised the link between his health problems and the UFOs he encountered. It is an interesting twist. John's complete medical records file from that time, from early 1980s time he served in England, still remains classified. In regards to the VA's actionised medical records and disability case, John says, in January of 2015, after years of exhausted efforts, the VA settled in full with me. I needed someone to champion my cause, someone not afraid to put themselves at risk to help me. I was lucky. I found two to champion my cause, my attorney Pratt Frasconia and Senator John McCain and his staff. Through their efforts, I received life-saving heart surgery to replace a badly shredded anterior mitral valve caused by the UAP radiation, and a settlement from the Department of Defence and VA admitting I was injured in the line of duty in December 1980. But John Burroughs insists the MOD has been dragging its feet on full disclosure while presenting the illusion to the public that it released all its UFO files. John is also convinced that his medical records from the December 1980 Bentwaters incident are classified to keep classified the link between the damaging impact of ionising radiation and other exotic technologies on his body and mind. As far as I'm concerned, the entire affair and evidence trail constitutes official top-secret confirmation that humanity is dealing with an intelligence capable of engineering interstellar travel. Well. What can I say? This is me, Ben, talking again now. This could be a smoking gun. I mean, it really is. It's hard to overplay this. I mean, it's been downplayed quite a bit in the language that used. Oh, excuse me. Pardon me. But this is essentially confirmation, official confirmation that UFOs exist, because they've officially admitted that we have our world's first UFO casualty, official UFO casualty. There are many, many more, and this actually could start a major common law trend here, because. Now John has got, John has had this admission. He squeezed this admission out of the United States government. Wants to prevent other people doing the same. People like Larry Warren, people like Jim Peniston, the various other people who've been had encounters with these things and been told there's nothing wrong with you. And people who've died as a result of their encounters, the damage they've suffered as a result of their encounters. So this could start a landslide in legal terms. It could be a very, very interesting legal precedent. That could lead to many more cases like this, and a whole load more compensation being paid out to millions more people. And they could always go back, they could always say, well, how about this, United States versus John Burroughs? And that's the basis of my case. And that'll be a very, very hard one for the officials to fight. They've already admitted UFOs are real, essentially, although they haven't actually said it in so many words. This legal ruling on John Burroughs does mean that. And so I'm interested to see if who else goes for it. I'd say please do. You can be sure I'll be covering it in this program if I do. If they do, I will have it on at Panwo TV. UFOs are as real as the aeroplanes that fly above our heads. Not my words, ladies and gentlemen, the words of the Right Honourable Paul Hellyer MP, Minister of Defence for Canada. Now this guy does not fit in to your standard UFO nut, as the skeptics would like to call us. Alright, he's never been to a UFO conference, he's never worn a tinfoil hat, he doesn't stand on hillsides with binoculars. This is an engineer who has been a top civil engineer since the 1940s, and he became an MP, and he's now he retired as the Minister of Defence. He's now in his 90s, he's very old, but he's just produced a new movie about UFOs, and please do go to YouTube and look it up. You can actually find it very easily. It's simply called Full Disclosure, Right Honourable Paul T. Hellyer, and you get it free on YouTube. It's 35 minutes long. It's free to distribute, and it's basically a guy who's involved in the Disclosure Project. I mean, the Disclosure movement. This is a guy who took part in the citizen hearing on ET disclosure in 2013, Stephen Bassett's event. He's really stuck his neck out, a man in his position saying the things he's been saying. And again, I would ask anyone who doesn't believe us and thinks we're all crazy to please think again. Right? This is a guy you need to listen to. This is the kind of people who, if people like him were not talking about UFOs and saying they were real, he's the kind of guy who you would say, oh, I'll believe you when someone like him talks about UFOs and says they're real. Okay, so stop raising the bar, cut the crap. Alright, admit it, they're real. Right, well, I'm sure you all remember what's been said about this guy. Of course, Vladimir Putin is very rarely out in the news. The Russian president. He's actually one of the few. He's one of the few statesmen in the world I feel any kind of respect for. Actually, he's done some good stuff for his country. Russia is really booming at the moment with the fact that he's turned down an IMF loan and he's refused to sell off his gold at a discount price. Unlike most other countries who've done that, and it's ruined them. Look at the state of Greece. Look at the state of Ireland. This guy is one of the few who's standing up to them, along with Iceland and maybe a couple more. But on the 5th of March, something strange happened. He disappeared, and he disappeared for 11 days, and no one's exactly sure where he went to. There's talk about him having a bit on the side with having a baby. His bit on the side was having a baby, stuff like that. That's probably one of the most likely explanations. But a newspaper story's been released saying he came down with flu. I mean, oh please. I know some blows suffer from man flu, but this guy doesn't. Come on. If it had been Cameron, I'd believe it, but not Vlad. No, not old Vlad. He's tougher than that. Now I can't help wondering if the reason this story has come out, and the fact that that's what's happened with Putin and where he went, could have something to do with UFOs. Now, bear with me. Now, there's this story that's come out recently about something called the M Triangle, right, which is a remote area near the Ural Mountains where bright lights have been reported and glowing aliens have been reported in the forest. This is very, very interesting because the Ural Mountains was the location for a horrific incident in 1959. It's a long time ago, but it still is unsolved, and I think it still has the power to chill people and to make people wonder. A group of young students were hiking in the woods on a winter's night when something happened. We don't know what happened, but they panicked and they burst out of their tents and they ran. And then they were found dead, and their bodies were burnt and appeared to be exposed to radiation. They had parts missing in the same form that some cattle have parts missing, as Linda Moulton Howe has revealed in her studies, and people like Richard D. Hall and David Caton and others have reported finding animals in that state with bits cut off them. It took a long time for the story to come out because this was sort of like in Soviet times, just after Stalin. The country was still very much a closed society, but reports did come out, and it's still unsolved to this day. Now, the M Triangle is in the same area, and it says that residents of this remote mountainous region count mysterious happenings as part of their daily life. Strange lights, flying machines, translucent beings, weird symbols written on the sky. And I can't help wondering if maybe this, what's happening here has got something to do with where Putin went. Do you remember that incident when they talk about how President Truman actually disappeared for a day, and they said, oh, he popped off to the dentist. Yet none of his bodyguards in the Secret Service or anyone else knew where he was. Now, the US president should never be somewhere where no one knows where they are, and the same goes for the Russian president. Now, Harry Truman, he disappeared for a day. Vladimir Putin went for 10. Or was it 11 days almost? Doesn't make sense. Something was up, something very important. He didn't just have the bloody flu. There's also, I mean, Russia, I think, is the place to look in the UFO world right now. there's massive amounts of evidence in terms of some videos and footage coming out, old films from the KGB have come out showing films of crash saucers, alien autopsies, real ones this time, not fake ones like the Santilli film crap. All right, these are real ones, and they've been confirmed as real. They've been analysed and things like that. Basically, when the Soviet Union collapsed at the end of the 80s, beginning of the 90s, there was a massive hemorrhage of classified information from the KGB that made its way onto the black market. So you could basically pick up a UFO movie, a real UFO film, for like £1,000 if you're willing to pay the price. There's people who'd sell it to you. And researchers have managed to get hold of some of this film, and it is really remarkable. Very, 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 very important indeed. And there was actually something presented on the History Channel. You can get it on YouTube. Just Google Russian Roswell and you'll see it. It's a program presented by Roger Moore, the guy who played James Bond. Now, a couple of years ago, Vladimir's right-hand man, the president, Prime Minister, Dmitry Medvedev, was interviewed, and he was recorded saying something. He didn't realise he was being filmed. And he said something quite remarkable to the journalist. He said that new presidents of Russia are always briefed into UFOs, and they carry material with them at all times, which allows their government to go into emergency action on UFOs. So this is rather like the fact that the president, he also carries like nuclear triggers with him, because if there's he needs to authorise the use of Russia's nuclear deterrent. He also carries with him material on UFOs, so he can authorise his country to react to the UFO threat. This is remarkable. It means that UFOs are taken as seriously as nuclear war, and they're classified as highly as that. So I think this guy, he's got some questions to answer. I think he's a bit of a lone wolf in the world. I'm not saying he's on our side. I'm not saying he's an anti-New World Order activist, but I don't think he's doing what he's told by the globalists right now, and he could turn out to be a valuable ally. We shall see. Right now we'll talk about the latest from Stephen Bassett, and one of the things he's said an awful lot about is Obama on the Jimmy Kimmel show. Yes, that's right. It's very interesting because President Obama was interviewed by Jimmy Kimmel, the TV reporter, who's sort of like the American equivalent of Jonathan Ross, I suppose. And he does this show called Jimmy Kimmel Live, and the president was on. And Kimmel, of course, asked him about UFOs, and the reason was because of what happened in the last couple of months. They had President Clinton was on there. Clinton, of course, turned up on the show looking a bit drunk and with a fake tan, and started talking all about how, oh yeah, I tried to get information on UFOs and they wouldn't tell me. Oh yeah, all right. And Bassett was talked about this in my radio interview. He thinks that Clinton was covering his back, his own arse. And then we had John Podesta and his final tweet, which I talked about in the previous show. So I think maybe Obama went on to Jimmy Kimmel as a kind of damage limitation thing, because he's obviously a lot more level-headed than Clinton, because he sat there completely still, with his arms crossed, with his hands on his lap, his head completely still, smiling. His facial expression never changed. His legs were in the same posture as if he was trained not to reveal anything in his body language. And then he said he said all kinds of things. He just said, oh well, I don't know. No, this is all not true. I don't know anything about it. No, I mean, I know everyone's going to think I'm lying. Everyone's going to be monitoring my body language. Yeah, he knew what was coming. So he was playing games with us, and it was all very prim, proper, and correct, I would say. Yeah, Jimmy Kimmel says, "Oh, look, if I might become president one day. You never know." Right? He says, "The first thing I'm going to do, just after I've sworn in my oath of allegiance to the office of the President of the United States, I'd be on the phone asking, I want to see those aliens. I want to see those aliens." He says, "Did you do that?" And Obama says, "No, I didn't. And then he quips. He says, "That's why you'll never become president, Jimmy." And then he says to Obama, he says, "Well, President Clinton said he did try to find out information, and no one told him." And Obama just laughs. "Oh, well, we're instructed to say that." So they had a good laugh about it, and basically, people might watch it and be reassured. And I think the truth of the matter is, I don't think Obama does know anything, to be honest. I mean, I think he knows everything he needs. He needs enough to. He knows enough to do his job, like all of them. It's compartmentalised. Obama is told what to say, and he's given as much information as can be revealed, so he can say what he can say to the public. US President is just a trumped-up public relations officer. The most powerful man in the world, they call him. Don't be daft. The US President has less power than you and me. Now, this article came out in a magazine called Jezebel. I don't know what that is, some sort of feminist rag, I think. But basically it says UFO enthusiasts are psyched for a Hillary Clinton presidency. Right, this is Hillary Clinton, who is going to be the next US president. I think she's been chosen. It's a foregone conclusion. They're going to play the political correctness card again. They've had a black guy, now they need a woman. And I think it's going to be her. And when I tell you what, as a little aside, I will remake my disclosure video I did dressed up as Obama, which I got an awful lot of stick for. I tell you, got called a racist and everything for that. I promise you, when Hillary becomes president, I will remake the video in drag. That'll be a laugh, won't it? Anyway, this article says ufologists are having a really great month. X-Files is coming back. Yes, it is coming back, actually. I'm looking forward to that, yeah. And for another thing, they're really pumped up about Hillary Clinton, like running for president, because make it 1997 again through science or magic. It isn't just a strategy for NBC. Mother Jones has an in-depth piece about this small but devoted interest group and their warm feelings towards Miss Clinton. This is partly due to the likely involvement of long-time Clintonian John Podesta, an X-Files superfan, who campaigned for more open records on the topic of UFOs. And this article then goes on to talk about Podesta's tweet. Then they interview Stephen Bassett. Yeah, Mother Jones talked to a registered UFO lobbyist. Great job title, or best job title, Stephen Bassett. And Bassett says, while the tweet may have been tongue-in-cheek, UFO activists went nuts over it. It was a big frickin' deal. Sorry, that wasn't all Bassett's quote, but it was a big frickin' deal, said Bassett. Somebody who had been an insider to the President of the United States and is leaving his job and is already being announced publicly that he's going to be a key advisor to the heir apparent of the White House, the de facto candidate, does not on any day he leaves the White House put out a tweet about UFOs. He's inviting hundreds of articles to be written about the tweet. John Podesta did not respond for a comment. But that's true what Bassett says, and I mean I talked about that in the previous film anyway. Anyway, the article continues. But their faith in Clinton also goes back to a meeting in the 1990s with Lawrence S. Rockefeller, who was apparently a UFO enthusiast himself. Bassett says that the Rockefeller Initiative proves that the Clintons were interested in pursuing meaningful UFOs and extraterrestrial disclosure. You don't go through all this and have this much work just to amuse a billionaire, he says. If you did, you'd have to answer to that. Bassett has been lobbying for congressional hearings on the question of UFO contact with the US government. He says that forcing the Clintons to discuss the Rockefeller Initiative is key to his strategy. I call it the exopolitical blue dress, he says, referring to Monica Lewinsky's infamous blue dress. If you think politicians won't entertain all sorts of shit to amuse a billionaire, you need to spend more time observing what happens here on planet Earth. Well, I mean, this is actually really interesting, right? I mean, it's true. I mean, this 1997 thing all over again refers to this theory that interest in UFOs has declined since X-Files went off the TV. And so they're saying, when in the late 90s, that was a real heyday. There was magazines and there was films coming out about UFOs, and the interest just disappeared since then. Well, I think they're trying to prove that this is just simply a media-created event, which it is not. And Steve Bassett, again, I'm going to say a bit more about Steve Bassett because he has he's written a letter to Hillary. Yes, on March the 28th, Stephen Bassett issued this press release from the Paradigm Research Group. Washington, D.C., March 28, 2015. On April 30th, 2008, Paradigm Research Group sent an open letter to Senator Hillary Clinton. Two things remarkable about that letter and this resend are: one, every word of the letter as sent in 2008 is exactly applicable in 2015, and two, since 2008 the mainstream political media has refused to engage the facts behind that letter, which has have huge implications for the nation and the American people. March 26, 2015. Open letter to the Honourable Hillary Clinton, Washington, D.C. Dear Secretary Clinton, in March of 1993, billionaire Lawrence Rockefeller initiated an extraordinary approach to your husband's administration via the Office of Science and Technology Policy, headed by Dr. John Gibbons. A memorandum from Mr. Rockefeller's attorney, Henry Diamond, dated March 29th, 1993, conveyed a request to meet with Gibbons to discuss potential availability of government information about unidentified flying objects and extraterrestrial life. Rockefeller, a friend and supporter of you and your husband, wanted to meet with the President and inform him. There is a belief in many quarters that the government has long held classified information regarding UFOs which has not been released, and that the failure to do so has brought about unnecessary suspicion and distrust, and that many believe that the release of such information on a basis consistent with national security would be a significant gesture which would increase confidence in the government. Thus began a 3-year effort by a notable American to convince your husband to essentially be the disclosure president, quote unquote, and end the then 46-year truth embargo on providing the full facts to the American people regarding an extraterrestrial presence engaging the human race. This effort, which included meetings, reports, briefings, a book, draft letters to the President and more, came to be known as the Rockefeller Initiative. You were aware of this initiative from the beginning, as was a key advisor to the President, John Podesta. You and your husband met with Rockefeller at his Wyoming ranch in August of 1995. Your husband tasked a friend, Associate Attorney General Webster Hubbell, to look into the UFO issue at the Department of Justice and elsewhere. He tasked John Podesta, his eventual Chief of Staff, to reform and accelerate the document declassification process. You were kept informed of the ongoing initiative and helped draft a letter from Rockefeller to the President. It is notable that John Podesta, founder and now CEO of the Center for American Progress, in 2002 and 2003 called for the release of to the public of all UFO and related documents in government files. In 2004, Governor Bill Richardson, UN Ambassador and Secretary of Energy during your husband's administration, made a similar request for documents pertaining to the events in Roswell, New Mexico during July of 1947. These facts are known from news articles, public records, and most importantly from nearly 1,000 pages of correspondence and documents obtained by researcher Grant Cameron from the Office of Science and Technology Policy via the Freedom of Information Act. Additional relevant documents were released from the Clinton Presidential Library. Madam Secretary, it is your ambition to reach a significant milestone in American history by becoming the first President of the United States who happens to be a woman, or put it another way, the 49th female head of state. While this would be an admirable legacy, what the American people need is less legacy and more truth. The people have lost patience with the in loco parentis government that treats them like children and candidates with long lists of issues they can't discuss because it's not convenient to their campaign, or the people can't handle the truth. Because you have been introduced to these matters within the context of the White House, because you aspire to the highest office in the nation, you have an extraordinary opportunity and primary obligation to address what is easily the most profound issue of our time, an issue with major national security and policy implications. Respectfully, Stephen Bassett, Executive Director, Paradigm Research Group, and he includes his contact details. So all I can say is well done, Steve. That's a very well worded letter for Hillary. I hope she reads through it. And I think you've sort of been very persuasive there with the old, enticing her with this sort of like carrot rather than the stick. In terms of what it would be like to be a disclosure president. Let's have less of this stuff and more of the truth, etc. That's I think went down very well. I hope it'll go down very well. But a word of advice, Steve: if you ever are in her presence or need to write to her again, make sure you have enough tact to avoid jokes about blue dresses. Okay, it may be a bit of a sensitive subject for her. Okay, so those slides again. Yeah, we had to bring them up sooner or later. In the last program I was talking about some of the naysayers and some of the skeptics with a C and with a K and what they were thinking of these slides. Well, a lot of them asked some very legitimate questions, as I was explaining in the previous film. Kevin Randall, he was very, very erudite, and he was very, very, I think his skepticism was fair and rational. He wasn't just blindly debunking things. I think he was asking some relevant questions, as was several of the other people I talked about. Now, in a minute I'm going to talk about the latest news on those slides and people's response to them. But first I've got to say that I think there's almost a kind of like a clique developed of people who almost wear their rejection of the slides as a badge of honour. There are people who I think have made their minds up, not really, I think, because they want to be, not because they're doing it rationally, I think, but I think in some ways they want to sort of like be ready for when it all falls apart to say, hey, I was the one who kept my head, man. I was the one who warned you and you didn't believe me. And I think that's the wrong attitude. I think it's right to wonder, it's right to doubt. I personally am not convinced at all that these slides are real, but I'm willing to wait and see. I'm going to be patient, and I'm not going to say either way. I'm certainly not going to be as negative as some people have been. I'm really referring to one person in particular here. Most of the UFO community have been either positive about this, or they've been rationally cautious. This particular one individual, I think, has been almost in a sense he's been almost in a sense it's almost despondence for the sake of despondency. I think it's irrational negativity. Now, I'm not going to mention this person's name, I'm not going to tell you who he is, but I will say that this man has cast a mantle of excessive cynicism over the subject. Now, one man I have enormous respect for, and you can hardly be interested in UFOs today without feeling respect for this man, and that is Stanton T. Friedman. Friedman has been always reared up against the noisy negativists, as he calls them, people like Philip Klass Cowalcorf, people like that, who just dismiss UFOs as nothing. And he has said the following about the UFO slides. Stanton Friedman chimes in on his alleged Roswell alien slides, on alleged Roswell alien slides, and his declination to participate in the upcoming show. That's the title of this article. I could find no convincing information that there is any connection between the slides and Roswell, says Friedman. I keep being asked my views about the so-called Roswell slides, so let me summarise my position. I've tried to obtain as much information as possible and responded with interest when at the International UFO Congress in Scottsdale, Arizona, in mid-February, I was interviewed by the journalist Jaime Maussan of Mexico City, who has arranged for a huge event focused on the slides. I recall the so-called Roswell autopsy, which turned out to be a fiasco. I had spoken with Ray Santilli over the phone, checked in a number of his claims, which turned out to be false. I met him twice in England and even had some comments distributed at his big press conference. Jaime invited me to attend the May the 5th Mexico City conference, as had Don Schmidt. My expenses would be paid. My first thought was that since I would be asked about my views, as the original civilian investigator of the Roswell crashed saucer event, it would be nice to have first-hand information, this being the worst winter of our 35 years in Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada. It would also be nice to get some warm weather away from the winter. So I read as much as I could, positive and negative. I have not held copies of the slides. I could find no convincing information that there is any connection between the slides and Roswell. How would an outsider gain access to the real bodies? I worked under security for 14 years and have been to classified facilities in New Mexico. The barriers are tough. I have seen no specific data to convince me that these are phony, but that doesn't establish a connection with the Roswell events. Yes, I am convinced that alien spacecraft with bodies on board crashed near Corona in the plains of San Agustin near Aztec, but I don't want to appear to add legitimacy to my presence in Mexico City, by my presence in Mexico City, in the absence of serious evidence of the slides being what they are claimed they are. Absence of evidence is not evidence of absence, and I have a grey basket. So Stan is actually he's not being against it. What he's saying, his point seems to be that not that these slides might not be an alien, but there's no connection to Roswell, and he could be. I think he is right here. I think Schmidt and Carey will admit that this is a photograph that stands alone. When a photograph stands alone, it can't be linked to Roswell itself. However, we do have the fact that if it's proven to be a real alien, then it obviously is from some kind of crash retrieval. It might actually not be the Roswell incident, but it'll be something similar. And as I've said in previous shows, and as I'll be saying in my live show in a couple of weeks, Roswell is just one of many of these events that happen all over the world at many different times. So Stan has a point here. I think where I disagree with him is the same way I disagree with Kevin Randall. He says here, how would an outsider gain access to the real bodies? I worked under security, etc. Okay, now again, he's making the same assumption that Kevin Randall is. Okay, we don't know anything about the Rays. We don't know about Bernard and Hilda Ray, but exactly who they were. Now, Kevin Randall goes on and on saying, how would a civilian do this? How would a civilian do that? Randall keeps using the word civilian over and over. He uses the word civilian about 3 times, I think, in his article. And again, he's making assumptions, and he's using a word. If it comes to the breakaway civilization we're talking about here, Richard Dolan, and we're talking about we need to know, all right, about the people who know about this, the people who need to know about it, and they're appointed by those above them, then the word civilian really has no meaning. And we should not assume that the Rays are outsiders. Kevin Randall is assuming that. Stanton Friedman is assuming that. Now, the Rays are actually quite mysterious figures, especially Mrs. Ray. They're quite enigmatic figures. We know from their photo collection they moved in very elite circles. Their photo, even taking away the aliens, the 2 alien slides, the others are extremely interesting. They're high quality colour prints of famous figures, presidents, sports stars, movie stars from the 1940s that have never been seen before. So if you even take away the 2 alien slides, alleged alien slides, it's still interesting stuff. So I think we should have a grey basket on the Rays as well, and Stan doesn't, which is a shame. And I agree with Stan actually that maybe it is premature and hasty and very sort of presumptuous to call these slides Roswell slides, but they should still be called alien slides if you think they're true. And Stan thinks they might well be true. He said here, he's not saying these are not true. I think Stan's making a mistake though. I mean, I'm all right. I'm not Stan. I don't know what's going through his head. But if I was in his position, this is cool. If it does turn out to be real, then he'll have missed a massive to be present at a massive historical event, and I think he will therefore regret it. But again, he may have his reasons, and we've got to respect his decision. And besides, he's not the only famous voice in ufology speaking out about this, and others have a very different view indeed. Now, Richard Dolan has put out a little piece here. Richard Dolan, I used to like Dick Pope, and now I want to off him. So I'm not going to try and imitate his voice. Sorry, Richard. As I said, Richard Dolan has put out a little piece about the Roswell slides entitled "The So-Called Roswell Slides and Mexico City: Why I Am Going." This is dated March the 8th, 2015. Probably the most interesting current controversy in ufology concerns what have become known as the Roswell slides. This involves 2 Kodachrome slides that were allegedly found in the home of a deceased couple. There is a long backstory to this, much of it written by Anthony Brailia here, and here, and also by many others like Nick Redfern and Kevin Randall. It's a fascinating story, and according to the latest analysis done on them, none of the specific results have yet been made public. The slides appear to be from 1947 film stock. Nailing down the date of exposure is another matter and may not be possible. Not surprisingly, they have been dubbed the Roswell slides, despite the fact there is no definite link between these slides and Roswell, only a surmise. And in fact, the name is unfortunate, since connecting them with Roswell has not added any clarity to the conversation, but has only added noise. Like many who study UFOs, I followed this development from afar, observing both the support and dismissals the slides have received. Despite the fact that they have not yet been released for public analysis, only a blurry image is currently available. I have never presumed that I am in a position to critique the way this has been handled by the people involved. It's never been my business or concern. Like most others following this, I have held the position that we can better make a decision about everything once the information is available for everyone. Until then, I have not seen the point of supporting or dismissing them, at least not to excess. In a case like this, I see nothing wrong with A, arguing that the slides are of potential significance and warrant greater study and imagination, and B, arguing that caution and scepticism remains in order. Both positions are reasonable in my view. Position A is not hard to understand. After all, the so-called Dream Team investigators have stated the preliminary analysis shows the creature in the slides is not a human, not a mummy, not a doll, not an animal, and appears to be on film stock from 1947. If this turns out to be so, how can this not be of interest? Position B is valid. Kevin Randall pointed out, even if the slides turn out to be on 1947 film stock, can we really be sure they don't depict a mummy or dummy? Perhaps a public analysis will enable us to come to such a conclusion, but that we will have to wait. More significantly, there doesn't appear to be a confirmed chain of custody of the slides, following the deaths of their original owners, Hilda and Bernard Ray. And when they turned up a few years ago, it was a gap of roughly 2 decades. We are told certain things about how they were maintained during the interim and brought to the attention of the researchers Don Schmidt and Tom Kerry, but how can such things be confirmed? The chain of custody problem is a definite problem for those seeking to prove the images depict a dead alien. In addition, we might wonder how Hilda and Bernard Ray would have come into possession of such images. Yes, they appear to have had some money and means and travelled quite a bit. Yes, they had original images of General Eisenhower and golfing legend Sam Snead, but as Randall pointed out, this doesn't necessarily mean a great deal. Many people would have been able to photograph those people at the time. It does not explain how they would have had access to what would have been highly classified information. I'm not saying such a thing is inherently impossible. Leaked data regarding UFOs has been taking place since the 1940s, but it's still a reasonable question to ask. Of course, one fact of potential significance concerns the background of Bernard Ray. He was the president of the West Texas Geological Society, which at the time also folded in the new state of New Mexico. Literature searches confirm that he worked the Permian Basin, which includes the Roswell region, in the 1940s. It's clearly suggestive of a connection, if nothing else. More recently, Nick Redfern has written a critique on why he believes the slides do not depict an alien being. In fact, says Nick, he believes the figure depicted in the slides is indeed a mummy. He may be right about that, or he may not. I would not care to jump in after A, seeing the slides myself, and B, reading detailed analysis by experts in mummification. Incidentally, despite his scepticism that the slides depict an alien being, Nick continues to support the idea that they warrant further study, even if he is personally no longer interested in them. I agree with him, they do, and I cannot agree with those commentators who dismiss the slides as outright as another alien autopsy hoax. There is no reason the slides should get their own public hearing and analysis before such a judgment is made. Sorry, that shouldn't get their own public hearing and analysis before such a judgment is made. And he goes on. That had been my feeling all along. Then in February 2015, to my great surprise, I was asked by Jaime Maussan if I would attend the event being planned in Mexico City on May the 5th. It is there presumably when all will be revealed regarding the slides, or all is currently known at least. I had much hesitation in participating. I asked Jaime what I could possibly contribute to any of this. I had no information on this controversy than what I had been reading all along with the rest of the world. There are also other researchers who would have been looking into this far more carefully than I have. Jaime's reply was that he wanted me to offer my thoughts on the future of ufology and the potential for the end of UFO secrecy, that is, disclosure. If there were to be general agreement that the slides are authentic, I did co-author a book on the possible ramifications of disclosure, and I do find it interesting to speculate on the subject. I didn't agree to participate, however, until after I had a long conversation with Don Schmidt. Of all the people with a connection to the slides, I know Don the best. He helped to fill in many of the blanks I had on the controversy. I came away with an even stronger feeling that this is indeed a fascinating development in the UFO field. I also had a long and productive conversation with Tony Bralier, for whom I also have a lot of respect, so I've decided to attend. My remarks will have nothing to do with the authenticity of the slides or their alleged lack thereof. I don't think it would be appropriate for me to jump in, and it's a debate that others can engage in. The event will either be history in the making, a much ballyhooed flop, or more likely, I'm thinking, something in between, where there will continue to be important unresolved questions concerning the slides. Not enough for either a home run or a strikeout. We shall see. In any case, I think I will appreciate getting an up-close perspective on all this. Some have criticised the event itself as being too sensationalistic. Indeed, the conversations on this subject have been marked by extreme opinions, especially by a few skeptics who seem to revel in trivialising the subject matter and the researchers associated with it. Some don't like the fact that the event is being organised by Jaime Maussan, or they don't like the fact that this big reveal smacks more of a marketing campaign than a research analysis. There will always be things to criticise by those people who are simply intent on finding something to criticise. Nearly everything in UFO research is messy, plus there is a perennial shortage of funds to do things the way we would like. No research money for starters, nor, with a few exceptions, is there much funding in the way presenting highly professional conferences. So when an opportunity comes along in which the evidence can be presented in a professional manner to a large audience, is this really what critics want to focus on? Isn't it more relevant to restrict one's analysis to the actual slides and the story behind them? I won't be participating in the arrangements and mudslinging that has accompanied this development. For my part, I will be happy to have a ringside seat at the event in Mexico City and the opportunity to provide a bit of commentary. As for now, I am not expecting these slides or this event to be a make or break event in ufology, but they are fascinating to me, and I do think they have the potential to be of real interest. Richard Dolan, Rochester, New York, March 2015. Well said, Richard. Very well said indeed. He makes a lot of the same points that Friedman does actually about this, which is fair enough. And he about whether these things have anything to do with Roswell, maybe calling them the Roswell slide is not a good decision. The problem is, because Roswell is so popular in this area, it would be inevitably they would be christened that. You see an alien an alien body, in a tank. Sooner or later, the word Roswell is going to come up, and I think that nickname was inevitable. It was going to happen. And he talks about, he goes into a few factual things like the exposure. All right, he talks about the shelf life. This is an important point, okay? Because this, despite what the certain person whose name I won't mention, who's casting a mantle of cynicism, and Kevin Randall, I don't know if Kevin Randall said this, but this is not another Santilli film, okay? There's several big differences. The owners, I was going to say perpetrators for a second. The current guardians of the slides, who are studying them, have made it clear they have controlled against the same issues that to do with the Santilli film. In other words, the thing about the Santilli film was from the very start, most people knew it was fake because Santilli refused to provide any forensic evidence in terms of the original film, or very little. This is different, okay? This is there. This is what I was saying about the Russian stuff earlier on, alright? The Russian films, it's the same. The actual original film has been analysed and proven to be correct. In this case, Schmidt and Carey claim that this film is correct. This film has been tested. These slides have been tested and found to be correct. And of course, it's true. The film stock is 1940s. We don't know when it was shot. All right. We know that the film was made in 1940s. We don't know when it was actually when the film photos were taken, but we can narrow it down to a few years from within the 1940s. All right, because film has a limited shelf life. You buy a film from the chemists, they say use it within, I don't know how many, they probably usually say something like use it within 2 years, because it doesn't last long. Eventually it deteriorates. Okay, so we know these photos must have been taken sometime around the 1940s. What I like about what Richard is saying here, he's a lot more positive, I think he is as rational or more rational than the naysayers, because he is being cautious. He's being as cautious as they are, but he's urging against what he sees, and I see, as their reactionary skepticism. They're almost dismissing this as a kind of reflex, and they're walking away from it, like they don't want to see it anymore. And that, I think, is a mistake on their part. And Richard is quite right to point that out in his normal, eloquent way. He's a brilliant writer, I must say, Richard Dolan. Like I say, Kevin Randall, the other guy, Stan Friedman, they're right to ask these questions, but I think maybe, and not just them particularly, but certain other people have been, they're just sort of like saying, well, I don't want to look at it, walking away. I mean, I haven't read what Nick Redfern has said about this, so I can only know what Dolan has said about Nick Redfern. Alright. Nick, he's a good guy, I like his books, he's a nice chap, but I will have to see. So I think my position is pretty much the same as Richard Dolan. All right, I'm sticking with it. What's interesting to me is that the reaction from the Roswell Slides team, Masson, Carey, Schmidt, they're almost you can almost like hear them sort of smiling, smirking quietly as as their critics speak out. They're saying, "Just you wait. Just you wait till the 5th of May, guys. Just you wait till the 5th of May, then it'll all be revealed. And you are going to feel a bit embarrassed." Maybe true. I hope so. I really do. But we'll see. Anyway, respect to these guys, very much indeed. And Richard Dolan, Stan Friedman, they're both sort of like quite level-headed. And I don't think anyone is actually saying, I mean, I know the Slides team are, but no one outside there is saying, oh my god, this is the real thing, man. There's no doubt about it, these slides are real, man. And we've got to get out of this polarisation, because some of the naysayers are depicting anyone who doesn't agree with them as a dupe who thinks they're all real. Oh god, it's all real, guy. Why do you believe in this, Ben? Things like, people have said to me, why do you believe these slides are real, Ben? I said, I never said these slides are real. I just said they warrant further study. You see what I mean? You get into this polarisation. If you don't, if you're not rejecting them, I found a hand now, then you obviously believe they're real blindly with utter devotion, and that pisses me off. I think it's a stupid attitude. And if they are proven to be real, and I think the negativists are going to have they're the ones I think are going to have the egg on their face, not Carey and Schmidt. Right, oh my word. On to the great UFO conspiracy, which I talked about in the last programme. Was it as bad as I expected it to be? No, it wasn't quite that bad. My expectations of it could not be undercut. However, well, I'll talk you through it. Okay, it was. I don't often watch TV in my house, so generally it's quite difficult to organise the time to go and watch it. But I managed to arrange it with the people I live with, that I could go and watch this film at 10 whatever it was. And I must say I felt a strong sense of morbid curiosity. 9:05 it was, so I switched on to Morpho at 9:05 PM and I waited. Now the titles were these crude childish cartoons. There was jocular mock spooky music. The presenter, Dan Schreiber, as I explained, he's a comedian. He co-presents QI with Stephen Fry, Skeptic quiz show on BBC. He said he wanted to know more about alien conspiracy theories, which most people think are solely an American phenomenon, but he wanted to show that they're common in Britain too. Now, Schreiber, incidentally, means writer in German, so it's like a storyteller. That says a lot. He looks like a hipster, actually, this guy. He's got these horn-rimmed glasses, he's got designer messed up hair. But he's a skeptic, but he said he doesn't want to prove us wrong, he's just fascinated by us. So he calls on Tony Topping, and I interviewed Tony Topping on Hapanro Radio, actually, a couple of weeks ago, so you can listen to that. Now he gives a summary of his life as a UFO witness, a targeted individual. Schreiber describes Tony as having classic conspiracy beliefs. Very good. And the music sort of changes to this parody of a detective movie score, as Tony takes Schreiber to these various places where he's had these experiences, and also to the headquarters of the Royal Institute of International Affairs. Now Tony sees them as a major part of the cover-up, and Tony describes his encounters with helicopters hovering low over him, and Schreiber just says, helicopters are a common sight in the skies over British towns and cities, yet Tony has used their appearance to come up with fantastical reasons to confirm his beliefs. Well, this is a total misrepresentation of Tony's story, and unfortunately that set the scene for the rest of the programme. Next up, Schreiber calls on Timothy Good, a veteran TV author and investigator. And Timothy told the story of what happened to him in USA in 1963. He was on tour with his classical orchestra and he encountered a young woman who communicated telepathically with him. Oh, excuse me. Oh. So she turned out to be extraterrestrial. And he talked about the Italian friendship case, and and Schreiber says he found it extraordinary that Timothy didn't conclude that the most likely outcome of his alien encounter it was just a coincidence. And that completely whitewashes over the depth and the complexity of the issue. And now this is interesting, because in one of Timothy Good's books, he briefly deals with the possibility that Jesus had been an alien, and the Star of Bethlehem was a spaceship that gave instruction to the three wise men by telepathy. Schreiber focused on this tiny little aspect of Timothy's research obsessively. Why did he do that instead of the far larger and more important areas that Timothy covers? In fact, Schreiber, he refers to this Jesus was an alien trope several more times over the duration of the programme, and it appears in the programme's blurb. And the next spot was, of course, the Barge Inn, at the basis at the Barge Conference. And, of course, they had that shot with Jeff Scott that I talked about. And then along comes poor old Miles Johnston, who tells Schreiber about crop circles and introduces him to Matthew Williams. Now, apparently, according to Schreiber, crop circles were revealed to be a massive hoax in the 1990s. Were they? But aliens are still involved, says Matthew, making them because they influence the human circle makers. And the viewer is shown Win Keach's well-known photographs of shadow people in crop circles without any real explanation about what's going on with them. And the same goes for when Miles talks about the black goo outside the MI6 headquarters. And you get this dumb trivialisation of the subject. I mean, I've reviewed what Miles says, and it's a lot more complicated and more serious than this programme is explaining. And all Schreiber can do is grin inanely like this happy, sated child. This is like really amazing science fiction, but in the real world. Miles Johnston is like Doctor Who. Does he really believe this, or is he just making it all up? There's no way to be sure. There's some footage, right? Dan Schreiber, he's surfing the internet on his computer, and he's shown some alien autopsy footage from Russia, okay? But it's not the best one. It's a bloody fake one. They don't show the proper ones. Why is it, okay, that they show the uninteresting and definitely fake UFO and alien footage, and not the ones that are more likely to be real? Answers on a postcard, please. Then Schreiber goes to a park for a secret location meeting, and along comes Max Spears, who informs him about the reptilian theory and the all-seeing eye on the dollar bill. And then Schreiber tells the viewer that a brand new groundbreaking theory has emerged that will turn the whole world of the alien conspiracy on its head. And it turns out that it's just that old chestnut Mark Pilkington brings up in Mirage Men about how it's all a big hoax. And it's completely insane. I mean, what can I say? Well, I was annoyed, I think, because I was too angry to go back and sort of like write a proper review of this. But I've travelled. It just travelled through the world of ufology and exopolitics, avoiding all the best research while distorting and simplifying and lampooning all the other subject matter it condenses. I mean, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll talk about what happened, because I appear in it. Okay, do you remember me telling you last time that I signed a form saying I didn't want to appear in it? Well, they bloody put me in it, didn't they? And I wrote these are my letters of complaint. Okay, I wrote 2 letters of complaint. Here's the first one. I copied this to Ofcom as well. I wrote to Channel 4 and Ofcom, and so I said here, dear sir or madam, this issue concerns a television programme that was broadcast on More 4 at 9:05 p.m. on Saturday the 14th of March of this year, entitled The Great UFO Conspiracy. It was an hour-long documentary produced for Channel 4 by Plum Pictures and Hat Trick International. One of the scenes takes place at a conference held in the rural Wiltshire called Bases at the Barge. I was a delegate at that conference, and I was present during the filming of that scene. The film crew were invited to attend the conference by the organiser and behaved appropriately the whole time they were there. All the delegates were informed that filming was in progress and that the footage gathered might end up being broadcast in the cinematic and or televised media. Therefore, all delegates were assumed by the film crew to have granted their permission for their image to be shown unless they specifically instructed the film crew that they were withholding permission. I was one of those who opted out. I told the director that I did not want my image to be used on the film in any way, nor my voice to be heard on the soundtrack, and they assured me that it would not be. The director wrote down my name on a form and took a photograph of me for their records, presumably so that the editor could avoid including shots showing me in the broadcast cut, or if including said shots, reducing the resolution of the picture of my face so that I was unrecognisable. Therefore, I was deeply dismayed to see myself in the programme when it went to air last Saturday. It is currently also available to watch on 4OD, which is Channel 4's on-demand catch-up service. It will be there for a whole month. I appear at 17 minutes and 26 seconds into the show. I am visible for the rest of the shot, which ends during 17:29. I am the large, tall, bald man standing at the back of the room, wearing a baseball cap and a white t-shirt with the letters CIA written on the chest. I am clearly recognisable, and several people I know have approached me and let me know that they saw me on TV while watching that programme. I know this is just a cameo shot and I was only visible for a brief period, but I still strongly object. I told the director that I did not want to be filmed, and they promised me I would not be, not even in a cameo. Other people featured during that scene had their faces pixelated, and I assumed they were others who had opted out like I had. The reason I feel so strongly about this is because, in my opinion, The Great UFO Conspiracy is a programme of extremely poor quality. I feel uncomfortable contributing to it. Even in such a minor role, I feel almost guilty or dirty. Therefore, how do I go about complaining? Well, you never know. You know what happened. Believe it or not, literally that same afternoon, a lady from Plum Pictures phoned me up and said, I'm very sorry this has happened. It was a big mistake, and we'll take it down for 4OD. We'll re-edit it. And I thought, wow, blimey. Anyway, they did. Believe it or not, they actually did, and it was later returned to 4OD with like this. Who's that? Never seen him before in my life. Well, that was one of 2 letters of complaint I wrote to Channel 4. There was a second one because it concerned a second issue related to the programme, and it goes thus. I didn't CC this to Ofcom, this was just Channel 4. Dear Channel 4, this issue concerns a television programme that was broadcast on More 4 9:05 p.m. Saturday the 14th of March of this year, entitled The Great UFO Conspiracy, hour-long production by Plum Pictures and Hat Trick International. I have already made a separate complaint about the Great UFO Conspiracy, which is a legal issue related to my involvement with the filming of it. This second complaint is my qualitative opinion of the programme. It gave a very misleading picture of the unidentified flying object phenomenon. Indeed, it sought to ridicule, distort and simplify the subject, ignoring all of the significant evidence, and trivialised the issues it did decide to cover. For example, Timothy Good is an author who's written over 20 books about UFOs, beginning in the 1950s, yet the show focused on just 2 aspects of his work. They dismissed his encounter with extraterrestrial being as coincidence, without informing the viewer of the depth and complexity of the issue, one which makes such a conclusion very unlikely. Also, in one of his books, Timothy deals. I talk about. I'll skip that because I've talked about it before. Okay, so I just basically go through my various. Then I say, UFOs or flying saucers, whatever you choose to call them, are a very real phenomenon. and a highly serious matter. The evidence is there in the form of official government reports on strange craft interfering with nuclear weapons bases, aircraft and entire cities. We have witnessed testimony of millions of people who have seen the craft and even encountered these non-human beings that come from inside them. These include very credible characters like government ministers, military officers, pilots and even a couple of astronauts. I find it deeply dismaying that television stations like Channel 4 are so reluctant to produce serious investigative journalistic reviews of this data. Instead, we're treated to silly and gimmicky charades, jocular scores and contemptuous lampooning of those who do take the bold step of investigating the matter seriously. I've often said that there's a limit to how bad a TV programme can be by accident. This is not an accusation against you, but I can't help feeling that if I were somebody high up in government and I wanted to distract public attention away from UFOs, then I could not do better than arrange for the production of a film like The Great UFO Conspiracy. Yours sincerely, Ben Emlyn Jones. So I told them exactly what I thought of that programme, and I stand by it. I really ought to tell you about this. I'm surprised I haven't mentioned this before. I did write about it on the Hapanmo blog. I've mentioned it on the radio show, but it happened a year ago actually in London. And I wrote an article entitled Weird UFO Meeting in London. And this is very, very odd, this was, yeah. This is the poster for the event, and it arrived, an invitation actually arrived just out of the blue. And I received it by private email, and it was just a couple of days before the event happened. And it was an event in London called the Roswell 1947 UFO. And so it's pretty much pretty much sort of like a very descriptive title there. And it was a performance by a troupe called Light Modulation Limited. And the invitation came from Dave. People say invite nowadays, don't they? I still say invitation. Invitation came from Dave Hodrian of Bufog, because a few weeks before that I had done my own lecture there, which I did film at the time. So I met up with my friend, she's my former friend now, sadly, but I do still hope to reconcile with her. That's Heidi. And Heidi and we headed for the venue. And like I said, we had very little notice. We hadn't been given much information. We were just given an address in central London, 4 St James's Square, Westminster. That is right in the heart of government, just a short walk from Buckingham Palace and the Houses of Parliament. And I had this idea in my head that the venue might be some kind of small bohemian theatre or a cinema or something. You often get these in London. Rather like this, the cinema I went to see Mirage Men in a few weeks before. I went with Heidi to see Mark Pilkington's film, which I was talking about just a little while ago. But it was far from it. I mean, you go into St James's Square, and it's one of these very officious locales in London. You get these. It's unique to London. You get these very wide streets with these mountainous Georgian townhouses standing around a small tree-lined park in the centre. And the pavements are like as wide as most roads in normal places. So we walked along these very wide pavements trying to read the door numbers. And that wasn't easy because they were hidden behind these big neoclassical porticos and separated from the street by these deep moats of basement wells. You know the kind of houses I'm talking about. And so we found the place, and we had a big flag outside, a Union Jack flag. We rang the doorbell. We went up to one of these cliff-like facades and we rang the doorbell. And the door, this big solid looking front door, it went bzzz, it opened automatically. Very James Bond this, letting us in. And I had to double check the address. I thought, is this really the place? And we went into one of the most opulent rooms I've ever seen. Oak panelled walls, leather, mahogany furniture, old paintings on the wall, a grandfather clock ticking away in the corner. I had to recheck the address again. And there was a reception desk, a big polished marble reception desk, and I went in and explained why I was there. And the receptionist, a smart young guy with a suit, he looked at me nonplussed and he got on the phone. And he also said, do you have a jacket and tie you could wear, sir? I went, what? You can't come in here without a jacket and a tie. And I thought, oh God. And it turned out this was actually the In and Out Naval and Military Club, a very exclusive urban retreat for senior officers of the armed forces. And luckily for Heidi, it wasn't one of those which are gentlemen only, otherwise she couldn't come in. So we were not permitted to enter the club because we hadn't conformed to the dress code. I thought they were going to send us home, but luckily we were allowed to walk round to the rear entrance of the building on a neighbouring street. And you go in there, and there's this big Keep Fit complex. There's this we go down these still very posh, even at the back entrance, and there's this big gym, a very upmarket gym with a swimming pool and a sauna and things like that. And we went to this very plush courtyard. And in the middle of this courtyard, they'd erected this very curious structure, a big black dome-shaped inflatable tent about 30 feet across. And there was waiters in white jackets serving drink to this cluster of gentlemen who were dressed in smart suit, and there was these ladies in expensive dresses. I mean, these were the people. These are the people we went to the courtyard, and there was these people there. I'm not kidding you. The place reeked of perfume and aftershave. There were gold Rolex watches peeking out from beneath shirt cuffs, huge diamond rings and diamonds glinting from earlobes and throats. And me and Heidi, we looked at ourselves and thought, what the hell's going on? And then Dave came over, another friend of ours, Mike Rutter. They came over and said hello, and they were dressed in suits, and they were the only people we recognised there. Yes, it was certainly not your average UFO conference, I can tell you that. Anyway, this courtyard had these strange statues in it. Like there was a goat. There was this bronze cast of a mountain goat, and that apparently is the mascot of the club. And we had a few jokes. We had a few drinks, and we had fun pretending it was staring at the goat. You know, the men who stare at goats. And there's a little room beside the courtyard called the Goat Bar. And it was really embarrassing because me and Heidi, we felt really underdressed. But we soon sort of like fitted in. Don't worry, bear with me, this is going somewhere. We soon sort of like felt we were fitted in, and we sort of like relaxed a little bit. The people there were very nice. And I got talking to this rather drunk young man called Max. And he didn't know what the goat meant, even though he'd been a member of the club for 3 years. And then these people turned up, and they were circulating around the party. And one of them, it was really weird, and one of them was dressed in a pilot's uniform. I'll show you a photo of him. Here he is. One of them was dressed in a pilot's uniform, and he was dressed like an alien. And there was this young woman there with bright blue hair and a very short skirt, and she had this very exaggerated deep south accent. You can see her there. She kept saying, "You'll have a nice day now." And more people turn up. Old, well spoken. Some of them had these little badges on their lapels, showed they were military men or serving or ex-military. And I couldn't help eavesdropping on some of their conversations, and they were saying things like, you know, our head office in Montreal, or at the last finance meeting we concluded, and things like that. And another guy came up to me. He's an Australian guy in a suit called David, and he pointed around the place. He said, "Look, next door is the headquarters of BP, and a few doors along they got the offices of the Rio Tinto Group, which is the Queen's company. And apparently the Chatham House, the Royal Institute of International Affairs, is just a few doors along, which Tony Topping talks about and appears in the programme." So these were very, very posh people, elite, rich, powerful people, and this area of London was their home turf. So you've got to ask the question: what's an exhibition on UFOs doing there? Blimey. I'll show you a few more photos anyway, which I took that day. It was really, really strange. Then we entered this inflatable tent, and there was just barely enough room for everybody. And it had been set up as this small theatre, and the inner wall of the dome was actually a huge projector screen, making the theatre a kind of mini planetarium. And it was very effective, and we were shown amazing images of the night sky and the sun, and views from the ISS, the International Space Station. And then there was a video presentation by Jaime Maussan, who is the famous Mexican ufologist, going, "Oh, these video proving," you know the guy I mean. Now this had been originally planned as a live video cast, but they had technical problems, so they couldn't get Jaime on. And instead they recorded a presentation for us. So we went out to get a break, get more drinks, just a single beer for me because they were very expensive. And after that we went back to the tent, and Dave did a speech, which was basically a one hour potted history of the Roswell incident for the complete beginner. And I went up to Dave and Mike, and I said, "Look, what's all this about? What's the background to this show?" And it turns out that Dave he'd been invited as a guest speaker. He'd not organised this himself, and the event was organised by the light modulation people. And he didn't really know anything more about it than I did. And I got speaking briefly to the director, and he's this Spanish guy called Florin Cabrera de Teresa, and he was very manifestly keen on the UFO issue and the subject. He was not just doing it for a gimmick. He was using it for entertainment purposes, but the intention was to promote it. And he had this team of very highly professional looking people there. There was a full media outfit. I did a brief interview in front of their TV cameras, and they asked me what I thought about Area 51. And I don't know when this thought came to me, and I'm surprised it didn't come earlier, but is it possible this was some kind of disclosure promotion? Okay, but I mean, bear with me. Just look at the facts, the strange facts. We have a UFO-themed pageant in the heart of the military and governmental establishment of London. This is a club where Prince Charles goes. All right. We have this mysterious background to the event. It's all a very quiet invitation by email, and nothing public. And even Dave himself seemed not to know. He hadn't been told everything about it. They just booked him as a guest speaker. He was a visiting expert, just brought in to brief people. And the people attending were not the types you'd normally see dead at a UFO conspiracy conference. These are senior governmental people. These are corporate executives. These are military officials. And people like Dr. Stephen Greer and Stephen Bassett, they talked about events like this, about events in the disclosure movement where they've been involved, they say, in low-key, even semi-covert consultations while they try to sell the idea of UFO disclosure, very subtly, very informally, to those they think might be interested, who might be maintaining the truth embargo and might be talking about ending it, or those who might be close to those, or know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody who's maintaining the truth embargo, who's in this breakaway civilization. Now, when I was speaking to this guy David, this Australian member, he was very friendly, we got on very well, but I felt he was grilling me in a very subtle and inoffensive manner. He was curious about UFOs, he was very curious indeed, and he came up to me, and he just specifically came up to speak to me. Probably because I was looking like a scruff bag and he wasn't used to that, and he was curious. But in the end, Dave finished his lecture, and there was this Q&A session, and I watched the reactions of the audience very carefully. Because if these people have connections to UFO secrecy, then their responses might reveal clues as to the feasibility of some kind of official public acknowledgement of an ET presence engaging the human race. Willing disclosure, in other words. Now, I had to leave before the end, unfortunately, because, well, the party at the club broke up. They went off to a nearby bar, the late night bar. I couldn't go. I had to get home. It was getting on for 10 o'clock. I had to catch my coach home. I had work in the morning. Which was very, very strange. I mean, I was aware this was Friday night. That was the very day of the week disclosure might happen, according to Richard Dolan and Bryce Zabel in their book, AD After Disclosure. They said it would take place early evening US Eastern Standard Time, so I couldn't help wondering on my journey home if tonight was the night, because I thought Washington DC is 6 hours behind our own, so we're talking about midnight, our time. So I got home about midnight, I think, and I switched on the TV in the vain hope there was some sort, we have a BBC special report underway, Obama says little green men exist, etc, etc. Fat chance of that. But as you guys know, my feelings towards official disclosure are extremely ambivalent and mixed. I can't let go of this irresistible prospect that it could happen. But I think there's a rational side of me says it cannot. But I've never wanted to be proved wrong on anything I've ever said before, ever, so much. It might happen, it might! And the thing is, if I'm correct in my suspicion, then what I attended was indeed some kind of elite, private, sponsorship occasion for UFO disclosure. If that's the case, then it does support the notion of what Bassett said, that he is taking steps to end the truth embargo. And if that's the case, I feel proud to think that I took involved. I feel very privileged and proud to think that I was actively involved in that process, in that to achieve that revelation. So I'm very grateful to Dave for inviting me. And if anyone wants to invite me to any more of these events, please do. And I will dress up properly this time. All right, now one more thing that has come up this month, these last few weeks, is that the Ministry of Defence has been accused of a UFO cover-up. This is in the Daily Mirror. MOD accused of UFO cover-up after delaying the release of a massive cache of evidence dubbed Britain's X-Files. That's original. Yes, Defence Chiefs of Staff publication of an 18 bombshell documents relating to unidentified flying objects in the skies over Britain. I wonder what Dr. David Clark is going to have to say about this, I wonder. Anyway, here we go. UFO spotters have accused Westminster of a cover-up over a delay of the release of a cache of documents known as Britain's X-Files. Known by who? Not by me. It's a nickname probably the Daily Mirror gave them. The Ministry of Defence promised to release 18 UFO files at the end of last year, but they have failed to materialise. After Lord Black of Brentwood tabled a question to the House of Lords last month, the MOD admitted it had not yet handed the cache over to National Archives for release. It blamed additional processing requirements for the delay and said the files would be released in late 2015 or early 2016. Nick Pope, who else? Who used to work for us, a UFO investigator at the MOD, said, "This massive delay will have conspiracy theorists up in arms. It looks like the MOD is stalling. The suspicion will be that there's a bombshell in these files, that the ministry does not know how to handle it. I can understand why conspiracy theorists will be angry and suspicious." Really, Nick? Well, you know, I think you know who we're talking about here, don't we? People like me. Anyway, some of the files are thought to relate to the UFO encounter in Rendlesham Forest, which has been dubbed Britain's Roswell. And then it goes on to talk about John Burroughs and what happened to him, and the fact that he's and Pat Frascogna and the legal case that he's been a part of. So, well, I mean, the question is, I mean, I personally wonder what's in these files, obviously, but these 18 files, but I doubt if it's anything. I doubt if you can see anything groundbreaking when it finally does come out. I mean, the reason they're delaying it is probably through some red tape. But we'll never know. I mean, it could be they're putting them through for additional editing to make sure they get some of the stuff out which they don't want released. It's hard to know, actually, and I don't think Nick Pope is going to be very forthcoming, quite personally. He's convinced that they have no saucer in a hangar, and the Ministry of Defence has been completely honest, because if they weren't, they would have told him, surely. Yeah. Personally, if I did have a saucer in a hangar, to use his quote, Nick Pope, the public face of British ufology, the man who's always on television talking about it, he's the last man on Earth. The last man on Earth who I would ever tell. Well, ladies and gentlemen, now we come to the comments section of this film, and once again I'd like to thank each and every one of you for the various comments you sent me. And as always, I'm going to go through those now and answer verbally. So, first of all, Stone Hobbit. This is comments that were posted on the previous video, of the 2015 UFO Disclosure 2015 series. Stone Hobbit. Ben, good video, informative and interesting. Appreciated. Enjoy the comment section commentary you do. Well, thanks, Stone. I appreciate your comment. I'm glad you like these videos. There's more to come. Like this one you've got now. I'm going to be covering this subject completely. Right, Paul Armstrong, hello. Thanks for commenting. That Champas will be vintage by the time of disclosure. He's talking about my disclosure champagne. Yeah, I don't know how long Perry lasts, or how long it keeps its body and bouquet and finish and things like that, Paul. But yeah, I mean, we'll have to see what happens. But I promise you, I will not open it until the day of disclosure. Even if I get open a really hard day at work and fancy a drink, I'll go and buy a bottle or something. I'm not going to touch that. It's under my bed, and that's where it's staying until that glorious and terrible day arrives. Oh, right. Derek Davis, LMAO, you are funny. Entertainment at its best. Well, thanks, Derek. I'm glad you find it entertaining. I wouldn't want it to be any other way. Hunley, ever the optimist, eh, Ben? I know Hunley well, actually, because Hunley is he's a member of the Hapanlo Forum. Ever the optimist. Sadly, I believe that if these slides ever do come to light, it'll be a damp squib and quickly forgotten, then pushed to one side, as I've said before. We won't get actual disclosure
where we get the truth, and the whole truth at that. Well, Hunley, yeah, this is kind of what Richard Dolan was saying. These slides may not be definitive no matter what happens. As I said, we could just hope that if they are real, then they will have an impact of some kind. If they're not, then we just hope we can limit the damage it does to ufology as a whole, and let Tom and Don take the rap. What will probably happen is that any information that we do get from the government on UFOs will only serve their own agendas. It will have nothing to do with revealing any kind of truth about the matter. So that bottle of bubbly you have may well become an ancient relic before any actual disclosure happens, because we'll need a complete paradigm shift before anything truthful is revealed to the mass populace by those in power. Yeah, there's a part of me that thinks that too, Hunley, and as I've said, I'm split over the issue. There's another part of me that thinks, what if? Could this be true? Could it be right? Just imagine, what if? As far as false disclosure is what you're talking about here, about the fact that any information the government gives us will be lies, we've already had some, in a sense, false disclosure through the way people like Paul Benowitz have been running. Now Mark Pilkington and other authors think that's the end of the story. I don't. I think there's much more going on than that. But I mean, it's, like Bryce Zabel said in his lecture at Exopol in 2011. He said, if it turns out the aliens are hostile, we may just have to forgive our governments and unite with them to protect our planet from them. And the question I asked him was, well, could it be possible that the government will tell us that the aliens are hostile, even if they're not, just to dig themselves out of that rather sticky hole? Many others as well as myself feel like there's something in the works. Sources are stating that there's a lot of money right now passing through black budgets and the like. The way things are going, I really wouldn't be surprised to see a false flag UFO incident very soon. James Corbett even brought this up in a topic recently. That's right, in the Corbett report. Yep, how to fake an alien invasion. Yep, that's a very, very good video worth watching that Hunley links to in his comment. This was also brought up on the forums not long ago. Yeah. As for the Phoenix Lights, the best, my understanding, is that the video it's mainly shown in relation to this, is not what people are actually seeing. What's shown in the video are flares, but why this discrepancy is hardly ever pointed out beyond me. Oh, $6.99 for that bottle? You got robbed, mate. They sell it in Asda for £4, yeah. The Phoenix Lights, there's the footage you always see in the news is probably not the best. So you think how many people did have cameras that day, and they did say they were filming it. So the question is, I mean, what happened to all that footage? But the footage you see on the news is definitely not the best at all. And as for the bottle, I don't go to Asda. Sorry, Hunley. I like to back up small businesses. Tom Stargazer, what date is disclosure? I don't know. Oh, one idea actually could be to have a sweepstake on what date it's going to be. We could take bets on certain dates, and maybe that could fund some disclosure efforts. I mean, that's an interesting idea, isn't it? We could have like a exactly. You could bet for sort of like, well, narrow it down to months. You could say like July 2019 or something, and you put in so much, and whoever's running the book will offer you odds, or it can just be a sweepstake where everyone has the same odds, and something like that, But either way, that could fund a lot of the projects. We could have like a 50% dividend or something. An outlaw in-law. The whole disclosure thing confuses me. The masses only care about how much money they have. To find out there is life beyond our planet or dimension does not pay the bills or put food on the table. A sorry state of affairs, really. Ignorance comes to mind. Well, that's where I think you're wrong, outlaw in-law. To know that there is life beyond our planet or dimension does pay the bills and put food on the table, not least due to the issue of energy. The issue of UFO disclosure and the issue of free energy disclosure, these two things are intimately connected. If we could find out that there was UFOs and we had UFO crash retrievals, we'd salvaged some of their wreckage and back engineered some of their propulsion systems and power plants,
That would put the bills. That would pay the bills. It would put food on the table of every single person on Earth a dozen times over. And this ties into sort of like man-made free energy as well. People like Nikola Tesla, as I explained in my video, Energy, Politics, and UFOs. Please do watch that video if you get the chance. It's on my list. Colin, you know my thoughts on the Santilli footage, Ben. I eagerly await Spirus's book when it's released and how he faked it, proof with 100% undeniable evidence. Having spoken at length with him, it appears that is not the case. Maybe we can do a joint video showing both sides of the argument in the 20th anniversary. I cringe when I hear people call it the Santilli hoax. Do we accept circle makers when they claim to make the majority of crop circles and offer no evidence? No, so what's the difference here? In fact, I would say it's much easier to fake a crop circle than this footage, and everything went with it. I feel let down by my fellow ufologists for not fully researching this case, or at least just dismissing it. The story is full of holes and contradiction. It defies belief. People have been bamboozled and refuse to see the larger cover up that was put in place once the footage was released. Your friend Colin. Hey, thanks, Colin. This is an issue we've spoken about privately, and we don't agree on it. Although, like yourself, I'm very, very keen to read Spyros Malaris's book. Spyros Malaris was basically the man who sort of like funded Santilli and the Santilli hoax. I do call it the Santilli hoax, as you know. But if I'm proved wrong, I'm quite happy to change my mind. You may be right. In which case, when we read that book, maybe we can find out. And as for the program telling both sides of the story, you want to do that with me? You bet. I'll be glad to do that. Right. Martino Catalano, a new commenter. A horrible thought, Ben. Could this slide thing be a big ruse to undermine the whole ufology community again? This time publicly in a massive venue unveiling, making it even more up for ridicule, humiliating the nuts en masse. Martino, yes, it could be. That is a concern of mine. If it turns out these things are fake, then I said before that Don Schmidt and Tom Kerry will be. They basically, that's it. Their careers are over. Jaime Maussan probably too. Carol Rosin as well. But it will do a massive disservice to ufology. And maybe this is why I understand how some of the more cynical people involved in this, in ufology, are backing off from it. People like Kevin Randle are sort of like keeping their distance because they're afraid of this, because they know what will happen. And I've said this myself. The skeptics will have an orgy over it. If it turns out this is just a mummy in some case in a museum, they'll be gloating about it for months and we'll never hear the end of it. And so I understand the concerns of people like Kevin Randle, like Stanton Friedman, but I personally think there's no harm in taking Richard Dolan's line. I don't think it does if it turns out, if it all blows up in our face, I think Richard Dolan's line protects us from the worst of it. I think if any honest reporter who's reporting on it reads what Richard Dolan's written, they won't go and say, well, look at that bloke, he fell for it, he's another of these nutters. I mean, if they're not honest, then of course they will say that. But then the thing about it is, you can't stop intellectually dishonest reporters from taking the piss and being rude and being misrepresentative, because they're going to do it no matter what happens. So really, I think we are in a position, I think, where we should take the risk by endorsing what Richard Dolan says, being cautiously supportive of this, and waiting to see what happens. Dazastar, when you think about it logically, the Americans are just the worst deceivers in the world, so I can't see them telling us about ETs anytime soon. Well, Daz, this is this immovable force and object, the immovable force and irresistible, the immovable object and the irresistible force again. They are. I mean, United States is an extremely secretive country, probably the most secretive in the world, and there's the culture there. The culture of secrecy is almost religious, and to dislodge that would be like digging up an ancient monastery. But
you know, I go along with what a lot of people say, that the truth is irresistible. It does come out. And now it seems that in the last few years the governments are finding it harder and harder to keep secrets. Snarnock, Ben. Hi Ben, I thoroughly enjoyed listening and watching your shows. Your interviews with Marcus Allen are extremely interesting. Look forward to part 4. Please, could you get Richard D. Hall on your show for a second interview? I think it's more important to expose the shadow government power elite first, and disclosure will happen after that. Thanks, Snarnock. I'm glad you like Panmo Radio. He's talking about my radio show now, and Marcus Allen is going to be back soon. Richard D. Hall is welcome back any time soon. I mean, Richard has changed his strategy a little bit. He tends to do his own thing now. He doesn't often appear on other people's publication. He organises, for instance, his own tour. He's in the middle of a UK tour right now, which I do recommend you go to see if you can. He's got a couple more dates left to run on it, so please do get to one of his shows. I've also, on the main Hapanmo site, I've just done a review of the event that me and Astain went to in Nottingham. So it's a big full-length review, main side article, which will tell you all about it. Richard, at the moment, like I say, Richard is very much a lone wolf. He's a solo maverick. He does his own thing. He doesn't often appear on other people's programmes anymore. I was lucky to get him when I did. He's welcome back any time, though, if he ever decides to. And every time I see him, I always offer him that. As for exposing the government shadow power elite first, then disclosure, well, I don't think you can have one without the other, because the disclosure is exposing the shadow government power elite, and exposing the shadow government power elite is disclosure. The two are inseparable. Beard Good, that's an odd name. That was another interesting video. I like the UFO stuff. Could I ask you do you know where the photo you have at the beginning of the video came from? And I have a photo that looks identical but slightly clearer image. Well, Beard Good, thanks very much. Glad you like the videos. It's one I took myself. That is a video I took. That photo. I actually explain in the end titles of the film. The photo you see in the last movie, Doubts Begin, was one I took in 1998 when I was hiking in Scotland. And it was near a nuclear base as well, near the Faslane Trident base in the Firth of Clyde. So UFOs and nuclear bases again. John Cole says anything that promotes disclosure can only be good. Yes. Tiberius Kirk. Hello, Type T. Oh, my old friend Tiberius Kirk has. He's a guy I know. I met him a few times. Yeah, not long now, Ben, and we'll see for ourselves if the evidence stands up. Thanks for the vid. You're welcome, Tiberius. Yeah, I know. I'm counting down the days to the 5th of May. I'm looking forward to it, and I'm nervous. I'm nervous in case it all blows up in our face, and I'm excited just in case it doesn't. So I'm counting. I'm not long now. I tell you what, I've got another bottle in. Along with my disclosure champagne, I've got another bottle in, which I'm gonna drink on the day of the. It's a bottle of spirits, actually. I'm gonna drink it on the day of the event. I'm not keeping that in the house. I'm keeping that somewhere else because I don't want 2 bottles under my bed. The temptation there will be too much. Jack Reaper. So things get stolen in your house regularly. Can't be Muslims, can it, Ben? They're lovely people. It must be the Illuminati pretending it's the Muslims. And it's really the NSA breaking into your house dressed as a shill, making the Muslims look bad in your house. That's it. Jack, you conspiracy theorists. Honestly, put your tinfoil hat back on. Oh, Heidi's commented. Right. Threppleton Homesby, that's Heidi. Although Ben is not talking to me right now after a huge argument we've had, I had watched Stargazing, and they hinted the possibility of another planet that may exist in our solar system. Could this be Planet X? Maybe, Heidi. I'm glad you're still commenting on my videos, and as I explain it, I have left a comment explaining that I am talking to you, and I will talk to you again if you want to talk again. That's absolutely fine. I've not seen that episode. I don't watch Stargazing live regularly. I'll end up throwing a brick through the screen because you know what I think about Brian Cox, etc.
But thanks for the comment anyway. I hope you're well. I hope you're keeping okay. And so's the family. Jack Reaper said again. So you're starting to doubt the authenticity of these stupid alien photographs. Well done. It's only been a month. The rest of us knew it was a fake after about 30 seconds. Think about it. Put yourself in their shoes. You've got proof of aliens, physical evidence. Do you disclose it in an excited and feverish and barely able to contain yourself, or do you organise a conference in Mexico for 3 months' time? Please. Well, Jack, you knew it was fake after 30 seconds. Well, I don't know how you knew that. I'm starting to doubt the authenticity of these stupid alien photographs. Well, Jack, I've always had doubts about them. I mean, I've said from the start that I'm not saying for a moment these things are definitely real. So I'm not starting to doubt them at all. I've always doubted them. And the title of this video is not so much the doubts for myself, but the doubts from other people. Now, put yourself in their shoes. You've got proof of aliens. Do you organise a conference? And why do you organise a conference in Mexico for 3 months' time? Good question. I personally don't quite understand what's going on here. Now, when Bassett was on my programme, I brought this subject up, and he thinks that Tom and Don are doing the right thing. That they're organising this grand unveiling is a good idea because it generates a lot of publicity, a lot of celebrity. You know, it becomes a big carnival. I'm not so sure about that, not least the issue of security. The security that the problems that could come if, for instance, the original slides get stolen. You can bet that if these slides are genuine, then whoever's keeping the secret is going to want them. Now, are they in a safe enough place? What if they go missing? What if whoever's got them has a quote-unquote break-in and a burglary? Hey, I mean, what's going to happen if something happens to those slides between now and May the 5th? What Tom and Don are going to say, well, look, here's some copies of them, but we haven't got the originals available right now. Sorry, someone stole them. I mean, I think it would be safer just to get them out there now, publicise them, let everyone see them, and that way, I mean, basically they'll be... once they're in the public domain, no one can take them then. I mean, I've said this on a previous... I said this on a previous video. Meat Pie Ballbag Mildred has left me a YouTube link, which is it's Heidi's video. That Heidi made some videos about me, and so yeah. I mean, okay. Well, thanks for letting me know, Meat Pie Ballbag Mildred. I know about that. Yeah, I've actually commented on some of Heidi's videos. I do hope we'll be friends again one day. I don't like falling out with people. Truther, star, laughing my ass off, Ben. Champagne to open when disclosure happens. What a great idea. Might need a whiskey if disclosure happens the hard way. Well, yes, Truther. In fact, I'll probably keep a couple of extra bottles around somewhere. I mean, I just think, you know, if disclosure, if it happens, will be a wonderful day, but it'll also be a very terrible day. I'll say more about that in my closing remarks. But I think I will definitely want to face the situation with a bit of Dutch courage. The Wide Awake Club. Ben Emlyn Jones Hapanwo. Ben has a better chance of meeting an alien than he has in seeing Kevin Annett ever campaign for real justice for First Nations people. What's this? Oh, this is... right, this is the... people who just will not leave me alone because I won't. This is another subject I talked about in my Shill Squad video. All right, so this person's commented on the wrong video and I've blocked them now. So because of the conduct, their conduct was below the standards I expect. Anyway, I cover it all on my Shill Squad video. That Martino says again, another researcher death. Well, Martino, I mean, obviously, if there is anything suspicious going on, then we've got to be careful. We've got to be wary of this. And Steve has actually, in fact, we've lost 3 people in the last month in the exopolitics world. And obviously, I think if there's suspicious circumstances, you should speak out. There's no reason to think that Daniela's death was anything other than it actually appears to be, which is a tragic accident. if information comes to light that says otherwise, I'll obviously react on that. Stephen Bamber. Oh, hi Steve. We will never get the whole truth from them. Oh, well, I don't know. You know, Steve. I know Stephen Bamber is someone I know. I've met him a few times, and we sort of know each other quite well. And we've talked about this. Again, I'm in two minds about this. I'm not certain. It's a bit iffy on my part, as I've said. Inanna Whimsy says, if I give authority for my contentment, anxiety, hope, etc., on that which is outside me, I will be discontent, anxious, hopeful, etc. If I base it on a place where my thoughts and feelings and ideas are generated on within, that's an entirely different matter. Just offering that in answer to my perception that you were expecting this disclosure. And Inanna, I think it's a she, not a he, she points some... Inanna has included a link to the information on John Burroughs, which I talked about earlier. Thanks, Inanna. So I appreciate that very much. Neil Stanton. We both think alike. Ah, cool. That's good, Neil. I'm glad I'm not the only one. Dazastar says, hey Ben, check out today's Yahoo News. Incredible poltergeist activity. Caught up by some woman is terrorising. Yeah, I saw that, Daz. Thanks for sending me that. That's a subject for another video, but yeah, it's quite something. It was something in America. Martino has commented again. Conversely, there might be a very, very good reason why they're ignoring all advice to release them now. Why would they draw this out? A big reveal in May, perhaps. I think that's it, Martino. Don and Tom and Jaime and Carol and all the other people involved, they're playing the audience. They're making this a big publicity event. And Steve Bassett thinks they're doing the right thing. I'm not so sure, but I do hope it works out. If these slides are real, then this could be the perfect way. It could, you know, it could be that there will be a It could be this. It's if they do it this way, there's going to be more publicity getting these things into the mainstream. Whereas if they just release them straight away and it's just another release, then it will go a long way within the ufological community, but will not have that impact, that publicity impact. A Catharism says, and get rid of the robot reply. It's fucking annoying. Meaning my notice is where I say, dear viewer, you will soon be, I'll soon be replying in another video. It's my round robin reply to you all. Just to make you alert of these comments videos. And you'll have just received another one to do with this video I'm doing now. Okay, Catharism, sorry for the robot reply. By the way, can I interest you in changing your gas supply? Anthony Barrett, another Truth for Dead. Yeah, peace, God and bless. Thank you, Anthony. That's right. Poor young Daniela. Yeah. And Daniel Bostock, this has had some traffic. Yeah, these are very popular videos, Dan. Thanks. Definitely, yeah. What's up with this woman, Ben? Says Catharism. Who's this? Oh, it's more about Heidi. Yeah, Heidi's series of videos. And Catharism says, I hope you can repair the friendship, and so do I. And I do hope Heidi and I can reconcile over this. She's been a bit quiet lately. Maybe she's offline. That's fair enough. But I do hope to catch up with her sometime soon. Stephen Bamber says, I'm sorry to hear about Planet X Radio. I really enjoyed the interviews. Me too. I loved doing Planet X, and I really was a great shame when it finished. Great shame indeed. Ian Bennett, thanks for sharing, mate. Much appreciated. He shared the video. He shares all my videos. He's really very nice like that. Back to India. Hello. I haven't seen you for a while. How are you? So many UFOs these days. The sky is simply filled with them. Well, see what happens. Keep up the good work. Thanks very much. Back to India. One more thing. Since about 2 weeks, my channel is as good as dead. I wonder if I'm censored. If you notice something strange, let me know. My channel was just starting to grow, but there's no interaction anymore. I make vids, no reactions, nothing. There's no point hanging in there. Why take all the trouble? Please let me know if there's anything wrong. Thanks a lot, Ben. Well, back to India. I have looked at your channel, and everything looks completely normal. I'm sorry if your viewing figures are dropping. It could be because you're uploading a lot more regularly than you used to. It could be that the viewers are spread out more. I still watch your videos. I still enjoy them. I don't always comment. I don't always have time to comment. I'm sorry about that, but you know, you're doing a good job. Stuff about chemtrails, excellent. Well done. Stephen Bamber, sounds like something has gone on in Canada. They might have got the chief. Could be a cover-up. Yeah, you're talking about the Canadian Roswell. That's right. I've heard nothing more on that since. The chief appeared on third phase and just said there's nothing going on. It's hard to say unless more information comes to light. Then that case is going to stagnate, and it could be it was just what they're saying it is just a military exercise. There's reasons to think otherwise. I'm not sure. Right, Anthony Barrett. Long caps lock sentences. Doubt, mate, doubts. I, for one, mate, have no doubts about any UFO object flying about in our skies. I have seen 32, no, in the last 2 years. To have doubts, I'm just thinking, when are they? They're not. Well, Anthony, I don't have doubts about UFOs at all. In fact, I'm pretty much on the same level. I mean, the doubts are more to do with the community in general. But I'd be interested to hear more, and please post more details about your experiences. I'd be interested to know. Here we go. Powers that be, fake Ashkenazi Zionist satanic evil mafia, ever going to spill the beans on what they know, because God is the only Father who knows what everything is about, because He created everything. Sorry, Anthony, it's not criticism, but your style of writing is hard to read, because you put everything in capital letters and your punctuation's all over the place. Because He created everything, these UFOs are not, in my humble opinion, from other worlds or other planets, but they are and always have been here under the firmament of the sky and heavens, and will show themselves and their leader Satan, Apollyon the Destroyer. Well, I mean, we'll see about that, Anthony. I'm sorry, we'll see how that goes. But thanks for the comment, and do share some more experiences of yours if you can find them. And so that's all the comments on the last video. I'm not going to. There's been other comments on the videos I've done previously in the series 2015 UFO Disclosure, but I'm not going to go through all of those. I just want to thank everyone who's left a comment this time. Please leave comments on this new video, and I will continue to answer those in future productions. So, much appreciated.
So ladies and gentlemen, do remember that I will be appearing very soon at the UFO Academy in Watford on Saturday the 18th of April. That's just less than 2 weeks now. This is going to be part of their Into the Unknown event. Doors open at midday and tickets cost £15 on the door. If you want to reserve a ticket, go to the website ufoacademy.com and email them there and tell them you want to go and ask them to reserve you a ticket. Now, the venue is this beautiful place. It's called High Elms Manor, and it's one of the most lovely locations you can imagine a UFO conference taking place. Georgian stately home, right in the middle of the countryside, lush forests and fields, and finely kept lawns and hedges and fountains and things. It's really, really lovely there. I've been there before. Now, my lecture is going to be entitled The Nottinghamshire Roswell. The Roswell incident is not the only one of its kind. In fact, events like it happen regularly all over the world. And in the UK, a strange occurrence took place in Nottinghamshire in November 1987. Could we be looking at the Nottinghamshire Roswell? So that's what I'll be talking about. I don't know how long I'll be on stage for, but I'm sharing the event with two other speakers. There's Philip Kinsella and Gary Heseltine, who I've talked about before. He's the editor of UFO Truth magazine, which I write for. And I do hope, if you can get there, please do. It will be very good. It'll be great fun. You get to meet some decent people, and of course hear my speech. So I do hope to see you there. So what happens now? Well, I'm going to make another video in this series as soon as there's more news. I'm going to keep covering this issue until disclosure happens in one form or another. And as I said, if it's possible, it'll happen now. If it's not possible, like I said, what's the future for the world if it doesn't happen? So I do recommend books like Richard Dolan and Bryce Zabel's AD, After Disclosure. Personally, I think the day of disclosure, of course, will be something to celebrate, which is why I've got my champagne. But it will also be something highly traumatic. The forces that have kept the truth embargo going for all these years are something we, in a sense, have become addicted to. And there is no it will be traumatic because there is no rehab clinic for us to check into. We're going to have to do cold turkey. And so there could be quite a sticky and very a great upheaval, of maybe quite a violent transitional period between the era of the truth embargo and the post-disclosure world. And so the day of disclosure will be a great day, but it'll also be a very terrible day. Either way, it has to happen. Nothing is more terrible than it carrying on without it happening, like I've said. So we're just going to have to wait now, see what happens. I'll keep you posted with any future productions, and please do watch my channel for more updates. Thank you for watching Panwo TV. Hospital Porters, Pride and Dignity, Stop the New World Order.